I hope you're doing well and have had an amazing week so far, and I hope you've been enjoying our little videos that we've been sending out every day. And today I'm going to do a follow-up video to Richard's video yesterday, and I'm going to be using the 3 steps that he spoke about to see and understand conjunctions in the Bible and see why they're so important. So I'm going to be looking at Ephesians 6 verses 10 to 13. And to give you guys a little bit of context, these verses are kind of setting the scene and helping us see why it's so important to pay attention to verses 14 and 17 that talk about the different elements of the armor of God. So I'm going to be reading from the New Living Translation. A final word: be strong in the Lord and in his mighty power. Put on all of God's armor so that you will be able to stand firm against all the strategies of the devil. For we are not fighting against flesh and blood enemies, but against evil rulers and authorities of the unseen world, against mighty powers in this dark world, and against evil spirits in the heavenly places. Therefore, put on every piece of God's armor, so you will be able to resist the enemy in the time of evil. And after the battle, you will still be standing firm. What I love about the Bible is that it explains itself. It doesn't just tell us something and leave it at that, but it helps us see why it's so important for us to take note of that and apply it to our lives. And a way it does this is through conjunctions. And so I'm going to be looking at important conjunctions in those few verses that help me to see what's being said, why is it being said, and what I must do with this information. So I'm going to be looking at verse 11 first. And verse 11 reads, "Put on all of God's armor so that you will be able to stand firm against all strategies of the devil." So we can locate the conjunction here as "so that," and "so that" typically indicates an action that's going to produce a result. And we can see that this conjunction is connecting the action of putting on the armor of God with the result of being able to stand firm against the devil. And therefore we can see what putting on the armor of God will lead to and why it's so important for us to do that. And following that is verse 12. And verse 12 reads, "For we are not fighting against flesh and blood enemies, but against evil rulers and authorities of the unseen world, against mighty powers in this dark world, and against evil spirits in heavenly places." So we can see right off the bat that following verse 11, the first word in verse 12 is "for," which is a conjunction. And for at the beginning of a sentence shows us that it's going to lead to some kind of explanation. And in this case, it's explaining the nature of the enemies that we are facing. And it's explaining that we're not just facing any normal human enemies, but we're facing enemies of the unseen world that we don't understand. And therefore, we can see why it's so important for us to obey verses 10 and 11, to find our strength in God and to put on the armor. And lastly, I'm going to conclude by looking at verse 13. And verse 13 says, "Therefore, put on every piece of God's armor, so you will be able to resist the enemy in the time of evil. Then after the battle, you will still be standing firm." So once again, we can see that the conjunction is right at the beginning of the verse, and that's "therefore." And like Richard said yesterday, "therefore" leads us to a conclusion. And in this case, it's connecting all the 3 verses that we've seen and concluding with how we're supposed to respond to it. And once again, how the result of our response to it. And so we can see that in verse 11, it tells us what happens when we put on the armor of God. Verse 12, it tells us how important it is to do so and why we must do it. Verse 13, it re-emphasizes that we must put on the armor of God in every single piece of it because it's that important. And it shows us and concludes with that after all of this, if we do that, we will be standing firm after the battle. And that's such a great encouragement to us in times like these when we feel like we're being attacked from every angle. So encouraging that we can go to God, put our faith in him, rely on his strength and not our own, and we'll be able to stand firm after the battle. So I really hope you guys will be able to take encouragement from that, and you'll be able to read the rest of Ephesians 6 and see the different elements of the armor of God and how to apply that to your life. I hope this was helpful, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.